Telling someone about a sudden death is never easy, but it's made much more complex and difficult when that person has an intellectual disability. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Julie. If you've seen some of the videos previous to this one, you know that I lost my husband suddenly to a heart attack. One of the hardest things that I had to do in the first week or two was making the phone calls to various relatives. And most of them were very easy. Explained the situation and left it at that and let them know that I'd be getting back to them. But there was one person that I knew I had to call, and I had to speak to her. And I had to speak to her personally and wanted to speak to her personally before anyone else explained anything to her. And that was my sister with intellectual disabilities. She functions at emotionally understanding things probably as a tween. So she understands quite a bit. She is in some circles, I guess the term would be very high functioning. She's very interested in what's going on. She is the person in the family that you do not tell a secret to unless you want the entire family to know. The way to get something spread around or broadcast is basically telling her, please don't tell anyone. This is a secret. And you can be guaranteed that it will be broadcast everywhere. She is wonderful and kind and sweet and extremely overzealous in her attempt to please people. It's one of the issues that is not always the best thing. So my concern was that when I told her she was going to pretend she would be okay or pretend that she was okay. And with the neurodivergent individuals, it's hard to tell if they're okay, really. And that's something that only you can determine if you have a family member who is neurodivergent. In my case, an intellectual disability that limits her functioning intellectually, basically. If you have someone in your family with Down syndrome or who is autistic, you know them, you know how they understand things and how they process things. I think that's one of the most important places to start with having the conversation about a sudden death, especially on your relative, your loved one who you're going to be speaking to deserves honesty and deserves to understand to the best of their abilities what happened. And you know more than anyone how much they will understand. In my case, I knew that my sister with the disability would understand death because our parents had both passed away. So she understood that death is a permanent thing, and she leans very heavily into her faith. And she knew from previous situations, so that I did not have to explain where Phil had gone, because it was going to be very obvious to her very quickly that Phil went to heaven. The issue that came up was she was not in the same place as I was. In fact, she was just across the state line with my other sister. However, I had to talk to her and get to her very quickly. So what I did is enlisted the help of my sister, and I will be forever grateful to her for helping her set this up. What we did is I let her know, my other sister, that I was going to be calling to let my sister with the intellectual disabilities know that Phil had died. And we needed to do this now, and we needed to do this not on the phone, but I wanted to see her, and I wanted it to be on FaceTime. So we arranged that. We may have not even used FaceTime. We may have used another app that she had on her phone. I can't remember. So much of those first 2 weeks, I just can't remember. And you may find that if you're going through this right now, things that are happening, they'll be difficult to remember. What the important thing was for me was for me to be able to see her reaction so that I knew she was okay, so that I knew that she understood that everything was going to be okay, that I was okay, that Phil was in heaven, and that he was in a better place, because that is how she understands and interprets death. And because I knew that about her, it was easier for me to couch things in terms that were concrete. I didn't say Phil passed away. I didn't try to make it any less than exactly what it was. And when I had my other sister set up the call, and I usually start off the calls with my sister with the intellectual disabilities, very upbeat, very happy, how are you, da-da, and how, just, all of the things. And this one, she knew from the look on my face, because it was FaceTime, that this wasn't a regular call. And I said to her that Phil had passed away. No, actually, I didn't say Phil passed away. I said Phil died. Phil had a heart attack and died. She's all about the details. She wants to know everything. So I told her as much as I could without overwhelming her. She wanted to know when this happened, where it happened, and what was going to happen next. And I shared that all with her because I knew that she could handle it. This may not be the case for you and your loved one, and that's something that is a judgment call. You know your loved one best. You know what their intellectual disability or their understanding of things. You know what limits they have. You know what they will be able to understand and not understand from your previous experiences with them, especially if you've had to deal with something difficult before a death. In my case, because we had already had 2 major losses that she had gone through, and this would be the 3rd because this was her brother-in-law, the conversation went like this. I told her Phil had died, and the look on her face was just, what? What? And I think she said, oh. And I paused, and I think that pause was very important. I let it sink in. And I said it again. Phil died. And again, there was a long pause because I saw that from just looking at her face, she was processing all of this. because I was calling out of the blue with this news. It was, as I'd mentioned before, during the Christmas holiday season, and she was looking forward to so many things happening, but now the holiday season for our family had turned into a funeral season. This interrupted her flow of activities as much as anyone else's, because she expected a very happy, celebratory type of, couple of weeks, and all the things that go along with the holidays, all the songs and joy and the tree and the presents and all of the things. And now suddenly, instead of that happening, we were going to be looking at a celebration of life. I wanted her to remember Phil as he was, as a happy, healthy guy that she loved, who joked with her, who gave her jokes to tell because she loves to tell jokes. And so my decision was that at our private viewing that we had, with the very few family members in attendance, that she would not be part of that, because I just didn't know what that would actually look like, metaphorically and realistically. I just didn't know. And so my thought was, I will have her stay with my other sister, which was helpful because I had so much going on. As anyone who's watching this who has just lost someone very recently, there's just a ton of stuff that you're doing and handling. And so it was truly a blessing that my other sister was able to keep her occupied and her mind on other things, on some holiday things, and also answer questions honestly. And if there was a question that came up, that she could call me and we would talk again. And I think we did talk again about 3 times that day, just as you would expect. This sunk in a little bit slowly. It was a lot to hear, and it didn't quite sit with her immediately as something that was real. And so there were a couple of callbacks about just details, and she kept saying, "How are you doing? How are you doing?" And I think the most important thing for her was for her to know that I was doing fine, that everything was going to be okay, and that I didn't want her to be concerned or worried. And that was my messaging. And I think that's important messaging for any individual who is neurodivergent and is comprehending things in ways that neurotypical people comprehend things. So I met her needs. I met her where she was in that conversation and in the conversations that followed. If you're facing this and you're feeling unsure and not quite certain how to proceed, that is not unusual. There is no right way, no correct script. There is nothing that you can say that will be the perfect thing, especially with an individual in your family who, again, is neurodivergent and is going to take in information differently than someone who is not neurodivergent. So allow that process to happen however it happens. what you can do is be supportive of however it is they understand and process things. And again, that is through knowing your person and how they've reacted in the past. And the truth is, people with intellectual disabilities or who are neurodivergent and are experiencing the world differently than people who are not neurodivergent experience love and loss and grief just like the rest of us. That may be in a different framework in their head, but it still is something that they process and feel very deeply. And your words don't need to be perfect. They just need to be. They just need to be and be honest and as forthright and as forthcoming as you possibly can be with them, so that in their minds they're not wondering and questioning, did this happen? Did something else happen? Am I getting the whole story? And in my situation, this was important because there was a loss of a family pet who my sister had, who the pet just, the dog died suddenly. No one could have expected that. That happened years before Phil passed away. But my sister didn't quite believe that the dog had passed away. I think she thought about it and came to some conclusion in her head that this dog was given away. Or we didn't want the dog, or something along those lines. So that was one of the only concerns I had when I was talking to her. So she didn't think that maybe Phil and I just weren't together anymore for some reason, that this was some kind of way to tell her or let her down easy, because she's very perceptive. But I knew that what would be happening in the very near future would be a celebration of life. She could read the obituary with help that was going to be published, and so that she would understand that this was something that had occurred, that was final, that no one was trying to pull the wool over her eyes for just as an expression, just to, so she did not feel that there wasn't something that we weren't telling her. And that was very, very important. If you're going through this right now, know that you're doing the best that you can. I did the best that I could, and that's all that we can do. And for our loved ones, they know that we're going through a lot, and they will be giving us grace and space to go through that. With our very special loved ones who are neurodivergent, and in my case, my sister with intellectual disabilities, she was amazing. She was amazing in her abilities to understand my grief and to be there for me. She was truly a tower of strength, and she truly was one of the I don't want to say only people, because there were so many people who really, really understood. But because she was so close to Phil and understood that this now meant I would be alone, she was that tower of strength for me. And I did see her very shortly after the FaceTime call, and she gave me a great big hug and told me that she loved me and that Phil was in heaven, and it kind of, the tables kind of turned, and suddenly she, I found, was consoling me. And our loved ones who are neurodivergent, who have intellectual disabilities, perhaps Down syndrome, perhaps somewhere on the autism spectrum somewhere, or who have other issues with understanding things differently than I don't want to say normal, because what is normal, but who are experiencing life from a different perspective, can be some of the strongest, and possibly the strongest among us. And I leaned heavily into that, and knowing that she was there and that she understood made all the difference in the world. At the celebration of life, she was the star. She told jokes. She had everyone laughing. She had everyone remembering Phil as the happy, wonderful guy that he was. And it was absolutely the most special thing that actually I remember from the celebration of life. There were many readings, many eulogies, but her getting up there and saying a few words. And again, kudos to my other sister who went up and supported her as she reached the podium to speak to the crowd that had gathered to honor Phil's life. She just brought a ray of light suddenly into the room, and I felt like Phil was there because this was his sister-in-law that he loved so much, and she was there, and she was telling jokes that he had shared with her, and I know that he was laughing somewhere and appreciating her so very much. So please remember to think about including your neurodivergent loved ones or your loved ones with intellectual disabilities in the process of your celebration of life, because not only will it be extremely meaningful to them, it will be extremely meaningful and helpful to everyone who is mourning. And I can say that from my lived experience. Thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, and please hit the like button. And if you would, or you would like to share this with someone who is going through a sudden loss or any type of loss, and you think this may be helpful, please do share it, because that's the point, is to grow a community, to help each other out, and to be there for each other. So I'll leave you with, again, virtual hugs. If you're going through this right now, my heart is with you, as always. And thank you very much for watching. I included this in the video because this is my sister's favorite squishy, mushy, I'm not sure exactly what these things are called. They're kind of pillow, whatever, friends. She absolutely loves this one. And so keeping her in mind, I kept it near me during the making of this video, and that's why he's here with me.